Next up, we have Marc D'Antonio. Marc has a degree in astronomy and is the Mutual UFO Network's chief photo video analyst. He's the host of SkyTour Radio show and host of the and creator of the popular SkyTour LiveStream, and which is a group of live deep sky telescope observatories on YouTube, where people can go on clear nights to watch beautiful deep sky objects materialize before their eyes in mere seconds. And that sounds fascinating. I definitely want to talk about that. Marc is the CEO of FX Models, a model making and visual special effects company specializing in digital and physical models and organic visual effects in the film industry. He has an extensive work history in television, discussing and investigating extraterrestrial life, appearing on several networks and television series and shows. Currently, he's regularly appears on History Channel's The Proof is Out There as their photo and video analyst. Welcome to the program, Marc.
Wow, Margie, thank you. It's very nice to be here. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm great. It's a very busy day interviewing lots of people.
I know.
All of you are presenters for Contact in the Desert coming up later this month. And so let's just jump into it and ask what your topic is going to be or what you're going to be doing.
Well, I'm actually going to be doing 3 different lectures. I'm going to be doing one that details the way in which life may have arrived here. And it dives into physics at a lay level that everybody can understand for how spacecraft may have made it through the vast gulf between the stars. And that process is something, believe it or not, that CERN at the Large Hadron Collider and Lawrence Livermore are working independently toward achieving, but they're not putting it all together yet, but they will, because I was talking about this with Bob Schroeder, a good friend of mine, who wrote the book Solving the UFO Enigma years ago. And I came on board with him and have been promoting it ever since, because from a physics standpoint, I think it's the only way they can be here. It's dimensional travel, but using string theory. So that's one of the lectures, and it's going to be talking about that process and how it actually works, and gives people at the lay level, what that actually means and how it can be achieved. The other lecture I'm going to do is not so much a lecture, but a live stream. I'm actually going to do one of our SkyTour live streams. We're going to open up our observatory in the Arizona desert, and we're going to take people on a night sky tour from California. And so I run it remotely now. In fact, I'm connected to it as we speak, and looking at the all sky camera right now. And so there's lots of things we do. And then tonight, if it's clear, I'm going to be doing a stream where I'm going to be opening up the building and starting up the telescope, and people come in from all over the world and they learn astronomy free with an astronomer, So, I mean, who could ask for more?
That's pretty awesome.
Well, you don't have to pay for a college education. You get it here.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really, really good approach to this. And it's all free. We have a Patreon, and people have donated lots to us here and there. And we are a 501c3 nonprofit corporation, so we can, get foundation support if people want to support us. And so it's been actually quite a wild ride.
I've got a few photos that you sent me.
Oh, yeah.
If you would explain what this is.
Yeah, that's me pointing out the Dumbbell Nebula in the constellation of Vulpecula. This is a planetary nebula. It's the remains of a star, much like the sun. And it made a nebula around the remains of the star. And that thing I'm pointing to is a white dwarf. Its surface temperature is like 40,000 Kelvin, which is it's like 41,000 Celsius. It's a massively dense star that's only about the size of the Earth, and it's still visible from thousands of light years away. That's how bright it is.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. And that's we're going to do that. This is the California Nebula, apt for the Contact in the Desert. And that's me right there with a little less than well, my hair's a little messed up there, but I was thinking more about the night sky and sharing with people. And that's a beautiful nebula that we see in the early winter sky. So that's gorgeous.
So when people join your live stream, they'll see you talking in the corner and then also see what you're streaming.
That's right. They see everything that you see on the screen and more. There on the right side, there's another set of parameters that comes out. There's some along the bottom that, we actually, when we make photographs, we actually stack photographs on top of each other, and people see that progress and they watch the images literally go from muddy and looking like noisy to being sharp, crystal clear, like we see here. So this is what we do, and there's literally no one else doing this on the internet or around the world. We're the only ones right now. I don't understand why. There's people doing astronomy for sure, but there's not people that are actually taking people on a wild ride in the universe with an astronomer who can tell you exactly what that is. Like, this is the Pleiades, the Seven Sisters. Okay. And surrounding the Pleiades is this blue dust. And now it's actually not blue. It's actually dark gray to black dust. But the starlight, which is blue, is being scattered by that dust. And so we see it as blue, and only the blue part is being scattered. The rest is not. Those round halos around the stars are just artifacts of our extremely fast optical system. And when we post-process and start to process these, we get rid of all those. So you just have the stars left behind. And that's that's Taurus. That's in the constellation Taurus in the wintertime.
That's pretty awesome.
Oh, they're beautiful.
I like a lot of ufologists, we love the night sky and we like to learn about it, but a lot of people have an interest. They just don't know where to go to get answers to their questions. So this sounds absolutely perfect for that.
Yeah, it's actually a kind of a one-stop shop. People can learn about astronomy and they can actually ask questions. We have a fantastic chat group. We have a huge number of moderators in our chat, and they will direct questions to me if I don't see them. And it's just an amazing family, the SkyTour family, we call it. We also have a SkyTour shop on Etsy, where people can go, and if they look for SkyTour shop, all one word, they will find all of our photographs on things like sneakers and blankets and mouse pads. It's even boxer shorts. I mean, it's crazy, and we put these high res photos on everything, and people can buy fine art pieces too. They can get framed prints on their glass. They can get them on canvas, on metal, and so we have that service too. And our portal is SkyTourLive.org, or SkyTourLive.com. We have both, and so it's SkyTour Live, all one word. And I got a bug flying around me, and but it's really, really fun. And so that's going to be one of our talks. I'm going to talk about the physics of how they get here. I'm going to talk about I'm going to do a SkyTour live stream. Then I have another lecture, which is going to be a general lecture for everybody, and we're going to talk about other things in the universe. And we're going to, in that one, we're actually going to show the scale of time here on the Earth. Because what I do is I actually put the entire history of the Earth on a roll of toilet paper, and then I unroll it out in the audience.
Oh,
yeah. I sent you a picture of that too.
I did see a picture of that. For some reason, that didn't get in my
that's fine
pictures here. But I wondered what the roll of toilet paper was for. I was thinking Blue Man Group when I saw that.
Interestingly enough, when I went to college, I took drum lessons from the guy who eventually went on to found Blue Man Group.
No kidding.
He was my teacher. And so I learned, all these variations of life and everything you do, the odd variations. I guess that's where I live. So illustrate the history of Earth, not by putting up boring numbers, but by going out in the audience and unrolling toilet paper.
That's very clever.
It's something that I didn't think of myself. I mean, I saw other people doing it. I've done it for years. And it's interesting to see that this roll, when you unroll it, it's 117 feet long. Okay. And the last 24 inches is where much of life happens. Okay. Dinosaurs died 18 inches ago on that scale. So they're not ancient history. They're recent history. And people go, wow.
In the scheme of things, yes.
Yeah, they can't believe it. Lucy, 4.2 million years ago, was that far away on this scale, a quarter inch. So from present day. So you can see that all these developments that we think are just ancient past are actually recent past. And there's been a whole lot of time that the Earth has been gestating and percolating and building oxygen up in the atmosphere, for instance. And that oxygen, for instance, happened 2.5 billion years ago. So we've had a long time with an oxygenated atmosphere for alien life to find us. Because oxygen, if you're carbon-based, like we are, and like much of the universe will probably be, oxygen is the big thing. You need that to live. And so they're going to look for oxygen just like we are ourselves. So we've been out there. And even though Stephen Hawking said, oh, we got to keep our heads down, we don't want to show ourselves to the aliens, we've already done it over 2 billion years ago. So life is the only thing generating that kind of oxygen in our atmosphere. So that's what's neat about this. So we stand out like a sore thumb, a brilliant blue blazing beacon, you know.
Is it your opinion that we are being visited by extraterrestrials or interdimensional beings?
I think they are extraterrestrial, and they use interdimensional means to get here. And the interdimensional means are the physics I was talking about earlier. You know, and real quick, just to show you, if I can, I got it. Okay, this is a typical UFO, right? This is the S4 saucer that we see. You know, Bob Lazar talks about it. Whatever, even if you don't believe him. Okay, this is something that people, not just him, have talked about. So you notice they're round, right? You know why they're round?
Probably because of the propulsion system.
Effectively correct. They're round. Well, first of all, they don't have a propulsion system. How about that?
Oh,
there's no engines. All they do is generate particles in their particle accelerators. These are particle accelerators. They generate particles that take them out of our 4 dimensions and into a 5th dimension, which is actually postulated by Randall Sundrum 1, a variation of string theory. And if they can go into the 5th dimension, if they go far, then when they come out, they can punch back into our 4 dimensions light years away. So they don't travel the distance between here and there. They're here and then they're there. Now, to us, that makes no sense. But to them, it's a straight line. They go from our 4 dimensions to this 5th dimension and then to another place on our 4 dimensions. To them, it's a loop that they've gone on, you know, a little line segment. To us, they disappeared from here and reappeared over here. Looks like magic, but it's actually just physics. So there's a whole new awakening and rebirth of the new physics that we're going to be having to discuss. And I'm not the only one that thinks this. There's a lot of people that are on board. And the Large Hadron Collider I mentioned earlier at CERN, they are investigating the particles which do the dragging of the ship into the 5th dimension. They built a detector just to look for those. It's called the Atlas detector. And in part, it's going to look for these that are called Kaluza-Klein gravitons. And wow, I mean,
so that's only a matter of a very short time until we have that technology.
Yeah, on that scale of 117 feet, it's probably going to be less than a hundredth of a hair, you know, on that scale. Okay. So it might be 100 to 1,000 years, or not even, maybe 300 years before we actually have a true capability.
Oh, really? You think that long?
Small ones. What's that?
Okay. Well, yeah, that seems like a long time, a long way off to me.
Well, that's because our human existence is only 100 years at the most, typically. You know, we don't have a understanding of what it'll be like 1,000 years from now. But imagine a civilization 1,000 years ahead of us, and I'm sure there's plenty. They've probably long since figured out this process.
Yeah.
And have been using it for some time. And what about a civilization 10,000 years ahead of us? Very possible in the universe. We find planets that are just forming now, and planets that are many billions of years old, well beyond ours. 12 billion years old. We found planets that old. So clearly, the universe has been making planets, and some of those, many of those, probably can support life if they're in that not too hot, not too cold area around their star. Sure. And that's something that we found. So if we found it, I'm sure other civilizations and beings found it as well.
Most certainly. I agree. You've done a lot of work with MUFON. As the ASD for Missouri MUFON, we have sent a few things to you for analysis. How many cases have you analyzed over the years, do you think, for MUFON?
Oh, gosh. I've been in MUFON since I was 11 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. I'm a real lifer.
Yeah.
And that was shortly after I had a missing time incident, by the way. And so that's what started that. And it was shortly after that missing time that I started looking at the sky saying there's got to be more up there than just us. And then I said at age 9, I was going to be an astronomer, and I never wavered. I stayed right on that path, and I went to school for astronomy, got my degree in astronomy. I work in astronomy now. So I'm telling you, there's reason for that kind of motivation and passion that people get. And mine was having that missing time episode as a 9-year-old.
Tell us about that. How did that come about?
Well, if we have some time, I will.
Sure.
I actually ended up going on a field trip with a school. It was to a pond in Connecticut here called Burr Pond, Burr. And I remember getting on the bus with a little bag lunch, sitting down on the bus. We're going to a pond. And I remember getting off the bus at the pond, and all of a sudden I was standing at the bus again and getting back on the bus with my little lunch, not eaten. And it was, everyone's yelling and screaming. And I said to the kids around me, when are we going to the pond? I thought we were going to the pond. And the kids are mean. They slapped me around, and you idiot, we've been at the pond all day. Where have you been?
Oh.
I still have my lunch.
Wow.
So I said, oh, well, yeah. And I sat there quiet, got back to the school, went home. And my mother said, all right, I don't know. Why didn't you eat your lunch? I said, I don't know. And I put it on the counter, went out to play in this empty lot next to the house. And the next thing I remember, I'm in an ambulance. I was having seizures, and I distinctly remember whacking my head on the ground and seeing ants crawling around. And I didn't feel the pain of hitting my head. And I saw the ants going, oh, look at those little red ants. Like I was not even in my head. I was like outside looking in, kind of a weird thing. And I went to the doctor. They brought me to the hospital. I come out of the ambulance, and the doctor looks at my head, and he sees the sand in my head and a big lump on my head. Okay. And he says, oh, it looks like he got a concussion. And I see the bump on his head. Well, the seizure is what brought about that, because I was slamming my head on the ground. So the hardest part of that visit was the nurse pulling out all the little tiny pieces of sand from my forehead, because some of it was really embedded.
Yikes.
They're washing it, making me hold a cloth over my face. They're picking at my, that hurt. That was the part that hurt, Then they said, okay, take him home. He'll be okay. It was just a concussion. Okay. All right. And the doctor saw the bump and thought that was the concussion, from the concussion. That wasn't it. Well, it wasn't it. That was caused by whatever happened that caused me to lose all this time, So it was from that point forward that I started to have an interest, and it was almost weird. It was like magic. I got home and I immediately started to wonder what else there was out there, I look at the moon and wonder if there was anyone living there. I didn't know anything about the moon at that point. I looked at the stars and wondered if they could have planets like Earth. Turns out, obviously, they do. Okay. And so that led to me going down. So I went to the school, the library in town. And Mrs. Brown, poor old Mrs. Brown, she was the librarian in the kiddie section. And I kept saying to her, I want to go to the adult books upstairs. I want to go and get chemistry books and physics books, and she says, you can't even spell the words. How can you read those books? I said, let me. And so they escorted me upstairs to the adult reader section. And I took out books on physics and chemistry. And some of them made sense and some of it didn't, but I ended up taking out a big stack of the books, and they're always so big, thick, and heavy, bigger than the kids' books. They were always flexible and small. And I had blistered through all the kids' books anyway and read them many times, and then on astronomy. And so I got these books, and I started thinking I read books on astronomy. At least I tried the adult reader books. And I read books on chemistry because I knew that chemistry was very important in space. I knew that Earth science was very important. So I learned a lot about Earth, primarily volcanoes and how they acted to, volcanoes are sexy and, wonderful as a kid. They're exciting. So I learned about those too, Margie, to figure out how the Earth was built, and I ended up getting a pretty good feel for it by age 10 or so, literally cramming for a year on all this stuff. Come home from school, get right on my bike and go to the library. Read until my mother called me or called Mrs. Brown at the library and said, "Is my son still there?" "Oh, yes, Millie, he's here. Let me get him." "Marky, you got to go home." "Okay." And I get on my bike and race home because I thought my mother was mad at me.
Sounds like you were obsessed.
I was.
Mm-hmm.
I was very obsessed with that stuff. I was obsessed with chemical formulas. I was obsessed with how chemicals were created. I actually built a still in the backyard that generated hydrogen gas. Okay. And I would put it into balloons. I would tie them off in the empty lot and I would hit them with flaming arrows and watch them go boom, because that's the good part,
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. I'd bring the cops every time. I used to have to run and hide every time I did it.
Wow.
Because it was rattle windows in the neighborhood. But, and that was in my backyard and that was going for about 4 months continuously.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So anyway, but the bottom line is it was forays into science that started after that event. I felt like it was important to get into science, learn about science, because I felt by I guess by the time I joined MUFON at age 11, I felt that it was only going to be through sciences like astronomy that we'd ever leave the Earth. And as an adult, I now say it's the rigorous application of scientific principles in astronomy and other sciences that are going to allow us to leave the Earth. It's those rigorous applications of those sciences. You can't build a rocket by wishing it so. You've got to actually build the rocket. You've got to know how to build a rocket. You have to know how to power it, And if you ever want to build something like this, you're going to have to spend a lot more time investigating the things that people say are right now impossible. You have to be open to the stuff that's coming and not let it pass you by. And that's kind of where I am. And I in that sense, I've been fighting the arrogance in science for decades. Okay, Margie, there's a lot of arrogance there. And, we can't have that, and you got to lose the ego. You can't have an ego because if you have an ego, you're going to get disappointed. You're going to be hurt by someone who doesn't agree with you and they're going to say bad things about you. And if you have an ego, that'll bother you and you'll recoil and stay away and not be willing to make your opinion known. I'm not like that because I don't have an ego to worry about. I dumped that long ago. I used to be arrogant. I used to be, but that was many decades ago. And I was on a nuclear sub as a visitor. They allowed me to go out because I do a lot of work for the Navy. That's what I do now. And some years ago, this is decades ago, and while at sea, the sonar guy saw a very fast moving object move through the sonar underwater, and it was moving at several hundred knots.
Wow.
And he didn't know what to do with it. He had his hands out to his sides when the executive officer came over. He said, "I don't know what to do," because they're trained to learn everything from whale farts to jellyfish, flip-flopping around. Okay. They're trained to know all these sounds, but this thing, he couldn't classify because it was moving faster than anything that any of his training had ever shown him. And so I was like, wow, that's very interesting. So the XO just looked at him and said, "Okay, log it and dog it." And the kid said, "Sir, yes, sir," and went right back to work. And I, of course, got up, Mr. Big Shot here, right? You probably see where this is going. And I said to the XO, "Oh, sir, I'm familiar with these things." They called them fast movers on the boat. I said, "Is there anything I can help you with?" He said, "D'Antonio, right?" "Sir, yes, sir." "You having a good trip so far?" "Sir, yes, sir." He goes, "Let's keep it that way." He turned and walked away. Okay. So 4 years later, I did a job for the Joint Chiefs. Okay. I worked for some pretty good people. And I went down to do this, deliver this model. It was for the office of the president. And I delivered it to one of the chiefs directly. And I asked him the question I should never have asked, but it didn't hurt me in the end. I said, "Sir, what can you tell me about the Fast Mover program?" And he looked at me and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mark, I can't talk about that program." I went, Okay, no worries. Thank you very much. Here's the project. Tell me what you need me to do. And then we just went on to business. But he told me everything without saying anything. Isn't that crazy?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. So we have a program. It's Observe and Report Fast-Moving Objects Underwater, USOs. Right? That's what it is. And they can't do anything about them. They're not aggressive toward us, and we have no hope of catching them.
Right.
And I know that we've tried. I have several cases I know that where we have tried. One of which, off the coast of Puerto Rico, there were 5 subs in with a surface convoy, and one of the 5 subs caught one of these objects on its sonar and gave chase. This object started moving up and down and far away toward the sub, far away from the sub, extremely fast. And the only way they could actually do that is through the process I kind of alluded to about these and how they travel. Interdimensional. So they're underwater, but they're not really underwater because they're oscillating back and forth between that 5th dimension and our 4 dimensions. And they're doing it rapidly. And so they're not really here and they're not really there. So they're not subject to the forces here. They're not subject to anything over there. They're just doing this rapidly. And they're holding that perpetually because they're using a reactor that generates these particles. I mean, there's so much more to this.
This is fascinating stuff, and I'd love to have you back on sometime for a longer talk. Thank you so much for your time today, and good luck at Contact in the Desert.
I have to say one more thing, too, if I may. For each of my lectures, I will be giving away astronomical equipment. We're giving away binoculars and whole telescope systems. So for the people who attend my lectures, they're going to get a ticket in their packet when they walk into the room with me. And they're going to be then eligible to win binoculars or telescopes. And we've got some really good friends who are actually donating this. One of them works at SpaceX, and he's actually he and his girlfriend are contributing these to us from their personal savings because they're passionate about astronomy like I am and like we are in SkyTour LiveStream.
Well, that is pretty awesome. I'm sure some people will go just for that reason to see you and possibly win something.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so they can watch the night sky. Excellent, yeah. Marc. Thank you so much.
Margie, thank you so much. It was a pleasure seeing you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
My next guest, Brian S. Wood, grew up in Southern California, where he first became exposed to UFOs when his father, Dr. Robert M. Wood, was engaged in deciphering the physics of UFOs while managing a research project on anti-gravity for McDonnell Douglas. In 1978, he graduated from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo with degrees in mathematics and computer science, and has had a long career in marketing, engineering, corporate management, semiconductors, computer systems, medical imaging, energy conservation, aerospace, and now in fusion as the CEO of Electric Fusion Systems, Inc. Ryan is regarded as a leading authority on the top secret classified Majestic 12 intelligence documents and the 1941 Cape Girardeau, Missouri UFO crash. Welcome to the program, Ryan.
Well, great, Margie. I'm happy to be here and excited for the Contact in the Desert. I want to see all my old friends that I've been out of touch with the past decade.
Oh, yeah. Not to mention COVID keeping us all apart and slowing things down, but it's good that all the conferences are coming back. You sent me a few photos that I think we should probably run through so you can explain what's going on. But I do want to ask you this question. How did you get interested in the subject of UFOs?
Well, I think I was 15 years old when my father brought Stan Friedman home for dinner. Stan started working for my father at McDonnell Douglas on this gravity investigation project. And so I was kind of, initially excited or interested in that, but I really didn't, it took another 20 or so years before I really jumped in with both feet and was more excited about ufology, but that's when the seed started for me.
Okay. Well, it's always something for everybody, but once you go in, you can't get out of the rabbit hole, right?
Right, exactly.
All right. So tell us about these pictures I'm popping up.
Well, I think that's the picture of the Pleiades. I'm not sure I sent you that one, but I
Ah,
guess.
okay. That was okay. Maybe that was somebody else, but it looked like it got
Yeah,
mixed up. Okay. Let me try again here.
there we go.
Aha.
The AI ufologist. Well, actually, this is a fun thing. Last November, I was working on some science with electric fusion, and we were doing some AI research on a couple hundred pages or a couple hundred papers, scientific papers about fusion using artificial intelligence. And then I decided, well, I got all sorts of books. I got 500 books that have been all scanned and OCR'd. So I trained my AI on it, and then I asked it questions. And so I asked it the first question of, what's the ET agenda? And it gave me 13, 14 answers, and I got like 6 or 7 of them right. And then I said, well, I hadn't thought about that. And then it just exploded. And for the next 2 days, I was mesmerized trying to answer progressively complicated and sophisticated questions about ufology. Why is there a cover-up? Why can't they be transparent? Well, why are there abductions? What are crop circles about in relation to ETs? And how would you accomplish disclosure? And so I tried to make it. These were all questions that were burning in my heart or my mind.
Yeah.
And so I maybe have a different cut on perspective, but in essence, I progressed through the most common questions, which are, why are they here? What's their agenda? To more esoteric ones like, who's going to disclose first? Is it China or the US, and why? And things like that.
Do you think you got some definitive answers?
Well, I got some, it was thought-provoking. I would say 2/3 of the book I sort of knew, but I've been in this field for a long time. But for somebody, freshly coming to it, it's a very good grounding tool to sort of give you a well-rounded perspective on the many different facets of ufology. And so I found it to be a very helpful chin stroking book, and it's relatively crisp. It's like 100 pages, and so it's not offensively long and complicated.
Well, there is something to be said for that.
Right,
That's for
yeah.
sure. I just got a book in the mail. It's like 300 pages, and it's like, I don't know.
Right, exactly.
Rather daunting. What about this one?
Oh, alien viruses. This is something that my father did, Dr. Robert Wood. It was out of print like 6 years ago, and I decided to reprint it, so it's back available. But in this, my father talks about crashed UFOs, MJ-12, and all these scientists that are sort of disappeared or die mysteriously. They were researching fascinating areas of viruses and potentially links to alien viruses and to that area. So, there's some good evidence in there. It's a very well written book. He's a good author, and weaves in crashed UFOs and Majestic 12 and the first annual report from Majestic, which is on the majesticdocuments.com website. So that's a fun one. It's on Kindle too, I think.
You mentioned, or I saw in your bio, that you have studied the Cape Girardeau crash in 1941, which is in my state. So naturally, I'm in tune with that crash. But is there any information that is not generally known to the public about that incident?
Well, to the public, sort of the quick review of the case is that well, some of the Majestic documents, so one of them did, mentions this Cape Girardeau, Missouri, 1941 crash, and that sort of got me excited about it. And then I think Stanton Friedman actually found Charlotte Mann, which was the granddaughter of Reverend Huffman, who went and blessed the alien bodies or the clone bodies that crashed in Cape Girardeau. So me as the first investigator who sort of did my work and launched it, and then Paul Blake Smith went on to do more research and work. My investigation techniques were around interviewing Charlotte Mann and looking at historical aerial photography to find out precisely where and precisely when. We still don't know precisely when. It's sort of fall. Sweater weather was the term.
Okay.
Spring or fall, we don't know precisely when. And then precisely where, you know, it was like a 10, 15-minute drive in a police car from downtown Main Street in Cape Girardeau to the site. And so when you look at the historical maps and do historical aerial map comparisons, you try to narrow down where it was then. And there's certain fields, and I've been to many fields trying to find precisely where. And that's been, if you can do those two things with any crash retrieval, when and where, you can make a lot of progress.
Yeah, it'd be nice to get some trace evidence.
Yeah.
Even today, there could still be some left behind, right?
Yeah, there is. I mean, one of the sites that was interesting is now a housing track, you know, so you never get it anymore there. But yes, it's still a very, I mean, more remote viewing could be done. And the Sykeston base was there. One of the things that's probably not widely known is Rush Limbaugh was, you know, from Cape Girardeau. And Rush Limbaugh's father apparently was very plugged into Cape Girardeau politics and was aware of something. Somebody called into Rush Limbaugh's radio show when he was still alive and asked him about Cape Girardeau, and he hemmed and hawed and said, well, you know, I think there's more to this than you realize, but I'm not going to talk about it. You know, so that's probably something people don't know.
Yeah, that I definitely didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's amazing. There's so much going on in the world that I would say the general public just has blinders on and doesn't pay attention to. Do you think that there are more UFO sightings and contacts now than there used to be, or is this something that people are just opening up and talking about more?
It's hard to tell. You know, there's certainly a proliferation of phones and awareness and sensitivity. So the reporting quality and numbers are probably going up, even if the underlying phenomenon was consistent. I guess my belief is that it's consistent, is that there's a certain rate at which things are going on, but maybe there's a slight bias towards an increase. I mean, from an ET perspective, you might say, well, planet Earth is pretty messed up now. We got climate change going on. We got these wars going on. We have all this political instability. It's probably time to pay more attention. The risk of nukes going off is higher. So from an ET perspective, even just studying emerging kindergarten planets, let's pay more attention. And there's probably more races coming around to check it out and talk about, you know, what's going on. So
just that would be logical.
Yeah, that's all I can say. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. What is your talk going to be about at the Contact in the Desert?
Well, that's great. Well, we're going to jump right into crash retrievals. You know, we have Grush's testimony before Congress and last July, and it took 18 years from the time that I organized the first crash retrieval conference in 2003 before he came to light and had my first whistleblower. We were way ahead of the time, but we'll talk about all the 104 crash retrievals that are in the Magic Eyes Only book. Not all of them, but many of them. And we'll talk about the Majestic documents and their relationship to that. And so from my perspective, it's always been about my specialty is crashes, crash hardware, and government documents. So the cover-ups what the documents say. We'll review all the documents. I mean, there's some 3,500 pages of leaked majestic documents spanning, 18 years or so from 7 different sources, and people have forgotten all that and what's important and what's in them, and some are original, and what sort of investigations have been done. So we'll go all through that, as well as the AI ufologist, and talk a little bit about a potential new book that I'm working on called UFOs Who Knows. It sort of goes to the famous quotations and credibility of ufology.
Do you find that it is a hindrance when you're doing research and trying to find newspaper articles where there was a time when it was okay to write about UFO experiences and crashes, and then all of a sudden it became not okay? And so there's been very few and far between anything seriously taken by the media until recent years, but there was a long gap there. Do you find that's a hindrance in your education and research?
I wouldn't call it a hindrance. I tend to ignore it. It's like I just do the work and do the science and research that excites me, and hopefully others will do the same, and just do what you can do to move the ball down the court and advance ufology. And if you can publish books or do videos or do conferences or engage your friends, you're building the process along. So I think the environment now is a little more open, but if you want something in the New York Times, it better be pretty stunning and verifiable.
Yeah, it better be Gordon Klaatu with their landed craft.
Right.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your movie, your documentary, The Secret.
Yeah, my father and I did this a number of years ago, but it was about Cape Girardeau crash and the majestic documents. We talked about Roswell a little bit. So it was one of the first efforts that went on the Sci-Fi Channel to talk about a lot of the early evidence surrounding the authenticity and the validity of Majestic 12 and Cape Girardeau and so forth. So it's older, but it's withstood the test of time, and it still has valuable information in it. And it's on, I think it's online. You can watch it, I think, online, as well as, get a DVD.
Okay. All right. And then this majesticdocuments.com, obviously what that is are the majestic documents. What would a person find there?
Well, this is the primary repository of all the majestic documents. So you'll find documents before a certain date and then after a certain date, and within each sort of section there's a paragraph description about the document, a PDF that they can download and read. Sometimes there's some authenticity discussions right there along with the document. There's discussions about sources of where did you get all these documents, and there's some details about authenticity as well, and it's really a tool to sort of familiarize yourself with the breadth of documents. There's also a lot of supporting documents from the National Archives and National Archives in the UK, and Freedom of Information Act requests that are related to the majestic documents that are supportive. So,
oh, good.
You get a broad swath. You can easily, if you're fascinated, you could lose yourself for an hour or two.
And certainly investigators would find that a very valuable tool.
Right, exactly.
Well, goodness gracious. Thank you so much for being on the program today. If even just for a few minutes, I appreciate it. And we're looking forward to seeing you at the Contact in the Desert conference.
Yeah, I am too. I want to catch up with, Rich Dolan and Linda Moulton Howe and Danny Sheehan and George and both Georges, I think, George Knapp and Nori. So yeah, it's going to be lots of fun.
Yeah, and they will be. I've got a little graphic here that hosted by Paul Hynek. Yeah, and the two Georges are going to go at it.
Yeah, every one of those people were at one of my UFO crash retrieval conferences that I ran from 03 to 09. As well as many others, Michael Schratt and so forth. So it's going to be loads of fun. I'm excited about hearing what they have to say. Yes,
indeed. Well, thank you, Ryan, and we'll be in touch.
Great. Thanks, Margie.
All right. Ryan Wood, most excellent. We will continue in just a few minutes. Up next is Ron James. Ron is a filmmaker, on-camera personality, writer, editor, researcher, content creator, musician, and entrepreneur. His recent documentary, Accidental Truth, UFO Revelations, narrated by Matthew Modine, has won 24 Film Festival awards and was recently mentioned by name at the beginning of the latest UAP congressional hearing by Representative Tim Burchett. The film has been called one of the most important UFO documentaries of all time. It lays out the case and the truth behind the headlines that are unfolding as we speak. The updated version of the film, tentatively titled Accidental Truth 1.5, but we'll get into that, will be released in 2024. James is a regular guest in many related podcasts and shows, including Ancient Aliens and more. He's the co-founder of MUFON Television, an online TV channel boasting the world's largest collection of commercial-free UAP-related material. He also holds the title of Media Relations Director for the Mutual UFO Network. Welcome to the program, Ron.
Thanks for having me on, Margie.
I'm so glad to see you again. And I just see you are constantly busy creating new things. Your first film, we'll show here, Accidental Truth. If you would just give us a short synopsis of that, that'd be great.
Well, Accidental Truth is, it's named that because we call an accidental truth what happens when a collection of evidence or statements lead one to a conclusion that wasn't originally intended to be revealed. And Accidental Truth is full of a lot of gotcha moments with guys like Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon and Gary Nolan, where they said something that kind of revealed more to the story. And so it's got that kind of nuance going on. And I'm happy to report that even though there are some gotcha moments in the film, all of those guys are still talking to me.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's a good thing, because a lot of times you might get somebody a little bit upset and they kind of back off. But I think everybody is more willing to talk now than they used to be. Do you find that to be the case?
Yes and no. There's still hidden hands that are managing this whole thing, that are the people that have the ability to go mainstream and put out information are still being controlled to a certain degree.
Yeah, even though the government says, yes, it's okay to report, there's still some hesitancy. I know I've spoken with pilots and military personnel who still will not go full blown on this, but at least we do have a few whistleblowers.
They're afraid to do it still, even though it's supposed to be this big open door policy. Walk onto the flight deck or walk off the flight deck of your carrier and talk to your captain. It's still very carefully managed. And this thing's been going on for a long time, since we had warships in the sea in the modern era. And even before that, we've been seeing these craft doing the exact same things that they're doing now, at a time when there's no way that it could have been our technology. So once again, we're just in another cycle of not getting the truth, getting bits and pieces, and then, you know, it'll die down, it'll blow over, and we still won't have answers.
You have a new film coming out this year. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so Accidental Truth Next is basically the follow-up to the original film. One of the things that's so frustrating about being a filmmaker, especially in a timely issue, is like if you're making YouTube videos or you're on News Nation like my friend Ross, that's easy enough to be current because something can happen yesterday, it could be on TV or on the internet tomorrow. But when you're producing a film, it has to go through a certain distribution pipeline, and it's literally 90 days from the time you turn in the film until the time the public can see it. And what happens is we're in such a fast moving environment that it just becomes very frustrating because by the time your film comes out, and it happened with Accidental Truth, so many things have happened that you wish you could have covered. So I started immediately documenting the things that happened right after Accidental Truth, like David Grush and other things. And so now we've got, within reason, what'll be the most up-to-date version of all of the things that have unfolded between the release of Accidental Truth and now. The David Grush story, we've got more interviews with politicians. I re-interviewed Ralph Blumenthal. There's just a lot of new information. So it'll bring you up, it'll recap some of the things that happened in the original movie. It'll bring you up to speed on some new stuff. And we have a couple of mind-blowing revelations because it wouldn't be an Accidental Truth film if we didn't have that.
Well, yes, we've got to have the mind-blowing stuff too. I'm looking forward to that. Your first film was just, well, not your first film, but the first Accidental Truth was amazing. That is a must-see for anybody, but most especially UFO enthusiasts and investigators. But I think anybody would find that. I've spoken to people who were very skeptical, and then they saw that film, and they said to me, you know, there may be something to this. I'm going to have to change my thinking on this. So, you know,
that's so gratifying to hear because I made Accidental Truth. I made the Disclosure Dialogues back around 2011, and it was a pretty up to date thing. But I didn't want to make another UFO film until I could really move the ball and present evidence like I was an attorney presenting the evidence in court. And what's really gratifying about it is that I don't know of anybody that's risen up to dispute the facts that we present in the film. And we really make the case. And so a lot of people will say, well, there's stuff in there that I already knew. That's true, but you can't be all things to all people. I wanted to make a film that if you knew nothing about UFOs, you could watch this and get a grasp. And if you do know a lot about the UFO topic, there's stuff in there for you too. So it really makes me feel good to hear what you just said about people actually watching it and it having an effect.
Your presentation for Contact in the Desert coming up is Beyond Accidental Truth, UAP and the Nature of Reality. Can you give us a little synopsis of that? Yeah,
you know, at the end of Accidental Truth, we talked about consciousness, and we talked about how a lot of this interactions may be individualized. And what we're finding is that as we explore the UFO topic and we look at different reports and different experiences from different people, we're realizing that there may be a very subjective element to this. In other words, 3 of us could be standing on the beach and all 3 of us could see a UFO, but we might not see the same one. And why is that? And what it really does is it opens doors to how we're perceiving reality. What is reality? Are we living in a simulation? If so, then the whole UFO topic, excuse me, the whole UFO topic, I'm just getting over a cold and a sore throat. The whole UFO topic is really just something that can be changed by a swipe of a cosmic keyboard. So it opens up all kinds of additional questions. It's like, it's no longer, well, are they from Mars? Are they from here? Are they from there? Are they time traveling? Is it all of the above? If we're living in some sort of a manufactured reality, these points are moot. And could it be that these phenomena are here to give us clues to the nature of our own existence, and that we're stuck arguing about nuts and bolts and where they're from and what they are, when really they're trying to tell us something much more profound?
You know, I have to say that I'm a longtime experiencer and remote viewer, and I've come to the same conclusion. And I think that people who are longtime experiencers eventually do come to that conclusion. They realize that consciousness has a major role in this, and your level of consciousness, and it has everything to do with the experiences. It does seem to be individualized. It seems that you could have a group of people, say, doing a CE5 event, like a lot of people are doing. We're doing it here in Kansas City. Each person has something different happen to them. Each person sees something different. Somebody might see an ET standing across the way and nobody else sees it. You know, what is that about? There is something else going on.
And, you know, one of the biggest things that I hope to see us take away is that we live in this world where we're divided by right and wrong, yours and mine, what you believe and what I believe. And we're just stuck constantly in this tug of war against each other's perceptions and the beliefs that we cling to. Mm-hmm. What if one of the most important lessons to be learned is that we all live in a subjective reality, and something can be very true for you. It doesn't necessarily have to be true for me, but it doesn't mean it's not true. And so once we learn, I call it the quantum nature of truth, that truth can exist in multiple states for multiple people. It might help us to stop the arguing and the fighting over the nuances of our beliefs. It might help us to understand more and more about the fact that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And that really is the lesson to learn here. It's a lesson that rings throughout all of time. And so the UFO phenomenon is so connected to our understanding of ourselves and our evolution in ways that we don't even understand yet. And that's what in the last part of Accidental Truth Next, we're exploring that. And of course, we've got more fantastic stuff about materials that nobody's going to have known. We have some things that we tested that are coming back, no known alloy. We have evidence that somebody did everything they could to steal these samples. And it's a very compelling story, just that alone. So yeah, it's a very interesting time to be a human.
Oh, most definitely. So I understand you are a musician. What do you play?
I play guitar and I sing and I write. When I was a kid, I was sure I was meant to be a musician, but I got sidetracked. But during COVID, I decided to pick up the music and just try to get some of my songs out. So we've got a new single that's coming out this month called "Oh Aliens," and it's a really fun song. The opening statement is by Robert Clotworthy from Ancient Aliens. You hear his voice on there. You see Congressman Tim Burchett. You see Richard Dolan. You see Michio Kaku all making little comments. And the lead guitar on this song is played by two people. One of them is my friend Adam Schoenfeld, who he's a country music guy, but he plays a great rock solo also. He's Tim McGraw's touring guitar player, and Adam has played on 42 #1 songs in the studio. And I was so lucky that he did this for me. And then I've got Mickey Free, who is a Grammy award-winning guy. He's a fantastic blues rock player. And he won his Grammy Award for doing the music with Beverly Hills Cop. He used to be in a band called Shalimar. And he is the third guitar on the song. So we're putting that out this month. It's going to be a lot of fun. And
are you going to be playing at the Contact in the Desert?
We talked about it, but I don't think so. I might try to do something during my session, but that's TBD. It definitely won't be the whole band because it costs $5,000 to get these guys all in one place. But so maybe when I get bigger as a musician. One more thing I'd like to point out and mention to people: there's a terrible scandal happening in the film business right now. People like James Fox, Stephen Greer, Carolyn Corey, Darcy Weir, myself. In April of last year, the company that's distributing our films, 1091, under a guy, David Fannin, and was being managed by a guy named Jim Martin as far as the paranormal film interface with us filmmakers. They were absorbed by a company called Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment, a guy named William Rahuna. And what happened is that they just quit paying us. And so
Oh.
James was owed nearly $1 million. Dr. Greer is owed nearly $1 million. The entire field of filmmaking, of UFO filmmakers, is owed collectively between $2 and $3 million that we haven't been paid. I never got one dime for Accidental Truth, not one penny. It grossed well over $1 million worldwide, and Mr. Rahuna decided that the money that should have gone to pay the filmmakers needed to go somewhere else. And now the company's stating that they might be on the verge of bankruptcy. And it's the biggest ripoff in the entertainment industry. And I'll be touching a little bit about it at the event. We don't want to go out and claim how we're all victims, because at the end of the day, we're not. But these guys did something really bad to a lot of people.
That is absolutely horrible. Do you have any legal recourse?
Well, the thing is that they gamble. I've always known that there was something shady about the film distribution business. You hear all the horror stories, but at the end of the day, sorry, I forgot to turn that off. At the end of the day, we thought we were signed with a good company that was going to do the right thing. Legal recourse is, sue them, and it's a lot of money. So a lot of filmmakers can't afford it, and that's what they're banking on. They can rip you off I shouldn't say that. They can fail to pay you a few $1,000 or $20,000 or $50,000. What are you going to do? Sue? So this affects tons of filmmakers, and very few of them have the resources to go to New York and initiate a lawsuit. It's $50,000 up front, and then you have to be able to keep that money spigot going. And these companies, they know how to wear you down legally. They can bury you in paperwork. They can drag the thing on through the court system for years. Mm-hmm. So basically, it's just, the contract's only as good as the people that you sign it with. And at the end of the day, what do you do? So we do have lawyers. There is a group of people that are doing what they can to try to get paid. But the person that bought Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment has done something like this before, where he bankrupted a company and investors lost $1 billion, and he almost got prosecuted, from what reports are stating. So there's these weird ways that you can do things in corporate America and get away with this kind of stuff. And so I think that the whole way that business works, you can start a business, you can incorporate it so you're insulated. You can go out, you can run up a bunch of debt, you can siphon the money off into shell companies and all kinds of obscure destinations, and then you can bankrupt the whole thing and walk away. And people do this all the time, but in this particular case, the UFO filmmakers and a lot of other filmmakers really got the short end of the deal.
Well, it sounds like everybody should get together and form their own distribution company, to me.
Yeah, there's a couple of people that have done that. Unfortunately, it's some of the new distribution startups are being created by some of the same people that were with the company when all of this stuff started happening. So I don't know whether that's going to be a benefit or not. It's out of the frying pan into the fire. we don't know.
All right.
I just moved my films over to a company called Film Hub, and they seem pretty good. Give them a plug. So it remains to be seen. Okay.
Well, you got Contact in the Desert coming up. That's the next big deal.
Yes.
What is there anything after that you have planned?
No, I'm just going to be heads down finishing the film and doing the promotion for it. I did a lot, and then I'll be doing a ton of podcasts, and we'll see where the music goes. Maybe we'll get booked to play some of the music somewhere. Yeah.
Love to hear it. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ron, for your time.
Thank you.
And we'll be talking in the future.
Contact in the Desert. Yep. See you there.
Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.